Commander Marcus Cole never wanted to be famous. He never wanted to be a diplomat. He certainly never wanted to crash land on a sacred alien moon that no one had touched in 10,000 years. But the universe had other plans. The ESS Horizon was a standard exploration vessel. It carried 50 crew members and enough supplies for a 2-year mission. Marcus was the first officer, a man known for keeping calm when everything went wrong. That skill had saved his life many times before. It would save him again today. The attack came from nowhere. Energy beams tore through the ship like paper. Alarms screamed. Fires erupted in every corridor. Marcus grabbed the emergency controls and aimed for the nearest solid ground. He did not know it was sacred. He did not know it was forbidden. He only knew that the alternative was dying in the cold emptiness of space. The crash was violent. Metal twisted and screamed. The world spun in circles of fire and smoke. When everything finally stopped, Marcus found himself alone in the wreckage. The others were gone. The ship was destroyed. But somehow, against all odds, he was alive. He crawled out of the broken hole and looked up at an alien sky. 3 moons hung above him, each a different color. The ground beneath his feet was covered in white crystal that sang softly when he stepped on it. In the distance, massive towers rose toward the heavens. Built from materials that seemed to glow with inner light, Marcus had landed on Thyria, the holiest place in the Volanthi Empire. The Volanthi found him within the hour. They came in ships that made no sound, descending from the sky like silver ghosts. The soldiers who emerged were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. They stood 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like liquid mercury. Their eyes held the light of distant stars. They moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy by comparison. They surrounded him with weapons drawn. Marcus raised his hands slowly. He knew that one wrong move would end his life. But he also knew that showing fear would make things worse. So he did what humans have always done in impossible situations. He stayed calm and hoped for the best. The soldiers spoke in a language he could not understand. They scanned him with devices that hummed and beeped. Then they placed restraints on his wrists and led him to one of their ships. The journey that followed took 3 days. Marcus saw things he could not explain. Cities floating in the clouds. Space stations the size of planets. Ships that traveled faster than light itself. The Volanthi had conquered half the galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of Earth. Their empires stretched across more star systems than Marcus could count. And now he was their prisoner. They brought him to the Imperial Palace on their homeworld. The building was so large that it had its own weather system. Clouds formed near the ceiling, and artificial sunlight streamed through windows made of crystallized energy. Guards lined every hallway, each one a perfect warrior trained from birth for combat. Marcus was dragged before the Eternal Throne, where Empress Valenthia sat in judgment. She was ancient beyond measure, yet her face showed no age. Her silver skin was flawless. Her eyes held wisdom accumulated over centuries. When she spoke, her voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You have trespassed on sacred ground," she declared. "No alien has touched Thyria in 10,000 years. The punishment for this crime is death." The court murmured in agreement. Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. But instead of begging for mercy, instead of falling to his knees, he did something that no one expected. He looked the Empress directly in the eyes and smiled. "I apologize for crash landing on your moon," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "If it helps, the view on the way down was spectacular." The entire court fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the Empress this way. No one had ever dared to show such casual disrespect. The guards raised their weapons, ready to strike him down. But the Empress held up her hand. For the first time in centuries, she was surprised. This small, fragile creature from an unknown world had looked at her without terror. He had made a joke while facing death. It was absurd. It was foolish. And yet, there was something in his eyes that made her pause. Curiosity. The Volanthi had not felt true curiosity in a very long time. "You're either very brave or very stupid," the Empress said slowly. Marcus shrugged. My crew always said I was a bit of both. From behind the throne, hidden in the shadows, two figures watched this exchange with great interest. Princess Seraphel was the eldest daughter and heir to the empire. She was known for her intelligence and her cold, calculating nature. She had never met anyone who could surprise her, until now. Beside her stood Princess Nyxara, the younger sister. Where Seraphel was calm, Nyxara was passionate. Where Seraphel followed rules, Nyxara broke them. The court considered her defective because she felt things too deeply. But watching this human face death with a smile, Nyxara felt something stir in her twin hearts. Both princesses leaned forward, unable to look away. The Empress considered her options. Killing the human would be easy, but it would answer none of her questions. Where did he come from? How did his primitive ship reach Volanthe's space? And most importantly, why did he show no fear? I will not execute you today, she announced finally. Instead, you will remain in the palace under diplomatic observation. You will be studied. Your species will be evaluated. And then I will decide your fate. Marcus bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise to be a very interesting subject. The guards led him away to quarters in the eastern wing of the palace. The room was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed could fit 10 people. The window looked out over a city that stretched to the horizon. Marcus sat down heavily and let out a long breath. He was alive. For now, at least, he was alive. What he did not know was that 2 princesses were already making plans to visit him. Seraphel wanted to study him like a scientific specimen. Nyxara wanted to understand how someone could be so unafraid. Neither of them slept that night, and neither of them could explain why their thoughts kept returning to the strange human with the easy smile. The universe had brought Marcus Cole to the heart of an alien empire. What happened next would change everything. Not just for him, but for humanity itself. The story was only beginning. 3 months passed. Marcus Cole became the most talked-about creature in the Volanthe Empire. Not because he was dangerous, not because he was powerful, but because he was different in ways that no one could explain. The Volanthe had achieved perfection centuries ago. Their bodies were engineered for maximum efficiency. Their minds were trained for pure logic. Their society ran like a perfect machine, every part working in harmony. They had conquered emotion. They had eliminated chaos. They had created a civilization that would last forever. And then Marcus taught the palace servants how to play poker. It started as a simple way to pass the time. Marcus was bored, and the servant drones that cleaned his room seemed curious about his belongings. So he pulled out a deck of cards he had salvaged from the crash and showed them the basics. Within a week, there was a secret poker tournament happening in the lower levels of the palace. Servants, guards, and even minor officials gathered in hidden rooms to play this strange human game. They did not understand why it was so enjoyable. The rules were simple. The strategy was basic. But the act of bluffing, of hiding your true intentions behind a false face, was something the Volanthe had never experienced before. It was chaos. It was illogical. And they loved it. News of the poker games reached Princess Seraphel through her network of informants. She was not angry. She was fascinated. How could such a simple game cause such disruption? She decided to investigate the human personally. Her first visit to Marcus was formal and cold. She introduced herself as a researcher studying alien species. She asked questions about human biology, history, and culture. Marcus answered everything honestly, even when his answers made no sense to her. You say that humans often act against their own interests, Seraphel said, reviewing her notes. You make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. You form attachments to objects and people that serve no practical purpose. How has your species survived? Marcus thought about the question for a moment. I guess we survive because we care about things beyond survival. We fight for love. We die for ideas. We do stupid, illogical things because they matter to us. Maybe that is our strength. Seraphel did not understand, but she found herself returning to his quarters again and again, always with more questions. She told herself it was purely scientific interest. She ignored the way her hearts beat faster when he smiled. Marcus, for his part, enjoyed their conversations. Seraphel was brilliant and curious. Behind her cold exterior, he could see someone who was desperately lonely. She had spent her whole life being perfect, and no one had ever treated her as anything other than the future empress. With Marcus, she could just be herself. But Seraphel was not the only princess interested in the human. Nyxara came to him in secret. Always at night, always through hidden passages that only she knew. Unlike her sister, she did not pretend to be formal. She sat on his floor, hugged her knees to her chest, and talked. She told him about her life as the second daughter, about always being compared to her perfect sister, about being called defective because she felt things too strongly. The Valenthi valued control above all else, and Nyxara had never been able to control her emotions. "They say I am broken," she whispered one night. "They say, my passion is a disease that needs to be cured." Marcus shook his head firmly. "Where I come from, passion is considered a gift. The greatest artists, the bravest heroes, the most brilliant scientists, they all had one thing in common. They cared deeply about something. Your passion is not a weakness, Nyxara. It is your greatest strength." No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Nyxara felt tears forming in her starlight eyes. She quickly looked away, embarrassed by her own emotion. Marcus pretended not to notice. He simply kept talking, sharing stories about Earth, about humans who had changed history through the sheer force of their passion. And Nyxara listened, feeling something warm growing in her chest. She told him her true name that night. Not the formal name used in court, but the secret name that Valenthi only shared with those they loved most. It was an act of profound trust. Marcus understood the weight of it, and he kept her secret safe. The weeks continued to pass. Marcus filled his days with small acts of chaos. He argued with the royal chefs about how to properly cook meat. He hummed songs while walking through gardens designed for silent meditation. He talked to the plants in the greenhouse, even though they could not respond. The Valenthi watched him with growing fascination. His behavior made no sense by their standards. He was inefficient, emotional, and completely unpredictable. And yet, there was something about him that they could not ignore. Something that made their perfect lives feel slightly empty by comparison. Everything changed on the night of the assassination attempt. A group of Valanthi purists had decided that Marcus was a threat to their civilization. His influence was spreading. His chaos was infecting the perfect order of the Empire. They planned to kill him quietly and blame it on an accident. 5 assassins entered his quarters through the ceiling. They moved in perfect silence, their weapons drawn. Marcus was sleeping, unaware of the danger. The first assassin raised his blade, and then the door exploded inward. Princess Seraphel stood in the doorway, her ceremonial sword glowing with energy. She had been watching Marcus through hidden cameras, unable to sleep, when she saw the assassins enter. She had run faster than she had ever run before. She struck down 2 assassins before they could react. Her movements were precise and deadly. Years of combat training flowed through her body as she fought to protect the human who had somehow become important to her. But she was not alone. Nyxara burst through the window at the same moment. Having seen the assassins from a different angle, she fought with raw fury, her passion giving her strength that surprised even herself. She took down 2 more assassins while her sister handled the last one. When the fight was over, both princesses stood over the unconscious bodies, breathing heavily. They looked up at the same moment and saw each other. The truth hit them both like a physical blow. Seraphel loved the human. Nyxara loved the human, and neither of them had known about the other. Marcus sat up in bed, staring at the 2 alien princesses who had just saved his life. His heart was pounding. His mind was racing. He had no idea what to say. So he managed finally. "I guess we need to talk." The sisters looked at each other, then at him, then back at each other. For the first time in their lives, they had no idea what to do. The Empire was about to be shaken to its core. The confrontation happened 3 nights after the assassination attempt. Marcus had barely slept since then. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the 2 princesses standing over fallen enemies. Their faces full of determination, and something else he was afraid to name. At exactly midnight, both sisters arrived at his door at the same moment. They had not planned this. They had not expected to see each other. But there they stood, face to face. With centuries of sibling rivalry suddenly focused on a single human, Seraphel spoke first. Her voice was cold and controlled, the way she had been trained since birth. "I did not expect to see you here, sister." Nyxara raised her chin defiantly. "I could say the same. What business does the perfect heir have visiting a simple alien prisoner? He is not a prisoner. He is a diplomatic guest under my personal supervision." "Your supervision?" Nyxara laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call your late-night visits? Your scientific research?" The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a blade. Marcus stood in the doorway watching this exchange with growing alarm. He had seen many dangerous situations in his military career. This might be the most dangerous of all. "Perhaps we should all calm down," he suggested carefully. Both princesses turned to him with the same expression. "Stay out of this, human," they said in perfect unison. Then they looked at each other, startled by their synchronization. Seraphel recovered first. She stepped into the room with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. "I will make this simple. I have already filed preliminary bonding documentation with the Imperial Registry. By law, Marcus Cole is now under consideration as my future consort." Nyxara's eyes widened with shock, then narrowed with fury. "You did what? Without telling anyone? Without asking him?" Velanthe tradition does not require the consent of lower species for preliminary documentation. It is merely a statement of intent to steal what is not yours. Marcus raised his hand weakly. "I feel like I should have some say in this." Silence. Both princesses shouted. He fell silent. Nyxara stepped forward until she was face to face with her sister. Despite being younger and smaller, she did not back down. "Your documentation means nothing. Paper does not create love. Forms do not build connection. Marcus chose to confide in me. He knows my true name, the name I have never spoken to anyone else. That bond is deeper than anything you can file in a registry." Seraphel's composure cracked for just a moment. Her true name? The human knew Nyxara's true name? That was a level of intimacy she had never achieved with anyone. A flash of something that might have been jealousy crossed her perfect features. "You shared your true name with him?" Seraphel asked quietly. "You trusted him that much?" Nyxara nodded. "I did. Because he earned it. Because he saw me as something other than a defective copy of you." The words hit Seraphel harder than she expected. She had always known that Nyxara lived in her shadow. She had never truly understood how much pain that shadow caused. For a long moment, neither sister spoke. Marcus watched them both, seeing the hurt and the love and the years of complicated history written on their faces. These were not just rivals fighting over a prize. These were sisters who had never learned how to be close. "I do not want to fight you," Seraphel said finally, her voice softer than before. "I never wanted to fight you." "Then why did you always make me feel like less?" Nyxara asked, and there were tears forming in her starlight eyes. "Why was I always the broken one?" "Because I did not know how to be anything other than perfect. Because showing weakness was never an option for me. Because... Seraphel paused, struggling with words she had never said before. "Because I was jealous of you." Nyxara stared at her sister in disbelief. "Jealous of me? The defective princess? You feel things. Real things. Deeply and truly. I have spent my entire life calculating emotions instead of experiencing them. You have something I can never have, and I hated you for it, even as I envied you." The room fell into silence. Marcus felt like he was witnessing something private and painful. Something that had been building between these two sisters for their entire lives. He wanted to help, but he did not know how. It was Seraphel who broke the silence. She reached out and took her sister's hand, something she had not done since they were children. "I do not want to lose him. But I do not want to lose you either." "Not again." Jura squeezed her sister's hand. "What do we do?" "We both love him. This is impossible." Seraphel closed her eyes, thinking. Her brilliant mind worked through centuries of Velanthe law and tradition, searching for a solution. And then, in a flash of inspiration, she found one. Her eyes opened wide. The rite of shared flame, Nixara gasped. That has not been used in 12,000 years. But it still exists. It was never removed from the legal codes. 2 or more members of a royal family may share a single consort if all parties agree. It was designed for times when political unity was more important than tradition. The court will never accept it. The Empress will be furious. Seraphel smiled, and for the first time she looked truly alive. Then let them be furious. For once in my life, I am going to do something illogical. She turned to Marcus and grabbed his hand. Before he could speak, before he could protest, she addressed the hidden surveillance drones that she knew were watching from every corner of the palace. Attention, citizens of the Velanthi Empire. I, Princess Seraphel, heir to the eternal throne, make this declaration. This human, Marcus Cole, cannot marry only me. My sister wants him to. Therefore, according to the ancient rite of shared flame, we shall both claim him as our consort. The words echoed through the palace systems. Within seconds, they spread to every corner of the empire. Within minutes, they reached other star systems. Within hours, the entire galaxy knew. The Empress was awakened from her sleep by frantic advisors. The Galactic Council demanded explanations. 17 species filed formal protests. Earth's newly formed Space Administration received millions of messages, all asking the same question. What is so special about human males? In his quarters, surrounded by 2 alien princesses who had just declared him their shared future husband, Marcus Cole sat down heavily on the bed. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. I just wanted to go home, he whispered. Seraphel sat beside him and took his hand gently. I am sorry. I should have asked you first. I was afraid that if I waited, I would lose you. Nixara sat on his other side. We both were. But we could not bear the thought of living without you. You changed us, Marcus. You made us better. Marcus looked at both of them. 2 alien princesses, beautiful and powerful beyond anything he had ever imagined. They had saved his life. They had opened their hearts to him. And now they were offering him a future he never could have dreamed of. This is insane, he said. Yes, Seraphel agreed. Completely insane. Nixara added, the whole galaxy is going to be watching us. Probably, and your mother is going to try to kill me. Almost certainly. It was a helpless, slightly hysterical laugh, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt a lot like hope. Okay, he said finally. Let us see where this goes. The sisters smiled at him. And for the first time in their lives, they smiled at each other too. Outside, the Empire was in chaos. But inside this small room, something beautiful was beginning to grow. The Empress summoned Marcus to the throne room 1 week after the declaration. The entire court was assembled. Thousands of Velanthi filled the massive chamber, their silver faces showing a mixture of curiosity and disapproval. This human had disrupted the perfect order of their civilization. Now he would face judgment. Empress Valenthia sat upon the eternal throne, her expression impossible to read. Beside her stood Seraphel and Nixara, dressed in formal ceremonial robes. They were not allowed to speak during this hearing. They could only watch and hope. Marcus walked the long path to the throne alone. He wore the simple clothes of a human, refusing the Velanthi garments he had been offered. If he was going to face his fate, he would face it as himself. Marcus Cole of Earth, the Empress said, her voice filling the chamber. My daughters have invoked the right of shared flame on your behalf. This ancient law has not been used in 12,000 years. Many believe it should have been forgotten entirely. Marcus bowed his head respectfully. I understand, Your Majesty, do you? Do you understand what you have done to my empire? The protests flooding in from across the galaxy? The questions about Velanthi purity that your presence has raised? I did not ask for any of this, Marcus said honestly. I crashed on your moon by accident. Everything that followed was not planned. And yet here you stand, claiming 2 princesses of the most powerful empire in existence. The Empress leaned forward, her ancient eyes burning with intensity. Why should I allow this to continue? Why should I not simply execute you and end this chaos? Marcus met her gaze without flinching. Because your daughters chose me. And if the Volanthi truly believe in logic above all else, then you must ask yourself why. What is it about a simple human that captured the hearts of two beings who have been raised to feel nothing? The court murmured at his boldness. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Very well, she said finally. I will give you one chance to prove your worth. You will undergo the trial of worth, a test that has broken countless Volanthi warriors. If you succeed, I will recognize the right of shared flame. If you fail, you will die. And my daughters will forget you ever existed. Seraphel and Nixara both started forward in protest, but guards held them back. They could only watch as their mother condemned the man they loved to an impossible challenge. Marcus nodded slowly. I accept. The trial of worth tested three qualities: intellect, resilience, and soul. No non-Volanthi had ever attempted it before. The court expected Marcus to fail immediately. They were wrong. The trial of intellect took place in a massive simulation chamber. Marcus was given command of a virtual fleet and told to defeat the Empire's greatest military strategists. The Volanthi commanders had never lost. Their calculations were perfect. Their strategies had been optimized over thousands of years. Marcus studied the battlefield for a long moment. His fleet was outnumbered 10-1. His ships were slower and weaker. By every logical measure, he had already lost. But Marcus was not a machine. He was human. On the 11th move of the battle, Marcus did something that made no sense. He ordered his entire fleet to charge directly at the enemy command ship in a suicidal attack. Every tactical computer in the simulation flagged it as a critical error. The Volanthi commanders assumed it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. It was a bluff. While the enemy focused on the charging fleet, Marcus had hidden 3 small ships behind an asteroid field. When the Volanthi commanders moved to intercept what they thought was a desperate attack, they left their supply lines exposed. Marcus struck with his hidden ships, cutting off fuel and ammunition to the entire enemy force. The Volanthi fleet fell into chaos. Without supplies, their perfect strategies became meaningless. Marcus picked them apart piece by piece. The simulation ended with a human victory. The court was silent with shock. How? The lead strategist demanded. That attack made no logical sense. Our calculations showed 0% chance of success. Alcus smiled. That is exactly why it worked. You calculated what I should do based on logic. I did the opposite. Humans call it the crazy Ivan. Sometimes the best move is the one that makes no sense at all. The trial of resilience came next. Marcus was placed in a chamber that could simulate any environment in the galaxy. He was subjected to extreme heat that would melt metal, then extreme cold that would freeze oxygen, then crushing gravity that would flatten most creatures into paste, then toxic atmospheres that burned his lungs with every breath. The Volanthi expected him to use the technological aids they had provided: force fields, breathing apparatus, temperature regulators. These were standard tools for survival. Marcus refused them all. He sweated and shivered and bled. His body screamed in pain. Every cell begged him to give up. But he did not give up. He endured. He adapted. When the heat came, he found shade. When the cold came, he kept moving. When the gravity crushed him, he crawled. When the poison burned him, he breathed slowly and focused on surviving 1 second at a time. Hours passed. Then days. The Volanthi, watching from outside the chamber, grew increasingly uncomfortable. This human should have been dead 100 times over. His fragile body should have collapsed long ago. But he kept going. Finally, the trial ended. Marcus collapsed on the chamber floor, barely conscious, covered in burns and bruises and blood. Medical teams rushed in to treat him. The trial master asked, genuinely confused, "Your species is so weak. How did you survive?" Marcus laughed through cracked lips. "Humans are persistence predators. Our ancestors chased prey across continents until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. We do not stop. We do not give up. Dying is easy. Living is the hard part." The final trial was the trial of soul. Marcus was placed in a chamber of perfect darkness and silence. He could see nothing. He could hear nothing. He could feel nothing. There was only emptiness in his own thoughts. The Empress appeared to him as a voice in the void. This is the true test, human. Many warriors pass the trials of intellect and resilience, but the trial of soul breaks them all. In this darkness, there is nothing but truth. You cannot hide from yourself here. Marcus floated in the emptiness, feeling his mind begin to fragment. Without sensory input, the brain starts to create its own reality. Hallucinations came and went, memories twisted into nightmares. Time lost all meaning. But through it all, Marcus held on to one thought. He had something worth fighting for. The Empress asked her question. What do you offer my daughters that the Empire cannot provide? Marcus thought about everything he had experienced since crashing on Theria. The conversations with Seraphel about logic and emotion, the late nights with Nyxara, sharing secrets and dreams, the way both princesses came alive when they were with him, becoming something more than the roles they had been assigned at birth. I offer them imperfection, he said into the darkness. The Velanthi have optimized everything except the ability to be surprised. Seraphel is brilliant, but she has never been challenged. Nyxara is passionate, but she has never been accepted. I offer them someone who will love them for their flaws, not despite them. Someone who will argue with them and make them laugh and drive them crazy. Someone who is messy and illogical and completely, wonderfully imperfect. The darkness was silent for a long moment. Then the Empress spoke again, and her voice was different, softer, almost sad. My daughters chose well, she said. No wonder humans terrify us. You remind us of everything we gave up to become perfect? The chamber dissolved around Marcus. He found himself standing in the throne room again, blinking in the sudden light. The entire court was watching. Seraphel and Nyxara were crying silver tears. The Empress rose from her throne and descended the steps to stand before him. For the first time, she looked at him not as an insect to be studied, but as an equal. Marcus Cole of Earth, she announced to the assembled court, you have passed the trial of worth. The right of shared flame is recognized. May the stars witness this union. The court erupted in shocked whispers, but Marcus barely heard them. He was too busy catching Seraphel and Nyxara as they rushed toward him, wrapping their arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. He had done the impossible. He had won. Now came the hard part, actually building a life with two alien princesses while the entire galaxy watched. The bonding ceremony was broadcast across 300 star systems. Trillions of beings watched as a single human stood at the altar of the eternal flame, waiting for his two alien brides to join him. Marcus wore a uniform specially designed for this moment. Earth's military honors decorated his chest, symbols of the service he had given to his home world. But woven through the fabric were Velanthi's ceremonial patterns, glowing threads that marked him as a member of the imperial family. He was no longer just human. He was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. The great doors of the temple opened, and Seraphel entered first. She wore robes of pure white light that seemed to float around her body like captured starlight. Her silver skin glowed with an inner radiance. She had never looked more beautiful or more at peace. For the first time in her life, she was walking toward something she had chosen for herself. Nyxara followed close behind. Her robes were the deep purple of nebulous, swirling with patterns that changed as she moved. Where Seraphel was calm, Nyxara was vibrant with emotion. Tears of joy streamed down her face, and she did not bother to hide them. This was who she was. This was who Marcus loved. The sisters walked together, side by side, equals for the first time in their lives. The rivalry that had defined them for centuries had transformed into something stronger. They had found in each other not a competitor, but a partner, and they had found in Marcus someone who loved them both, not despite their differences, but because of them. The ceremony itself was brief. Ancient words were spoken in the Velananthi's sacred language. Flames rose from the altar, joining together in a spiral that represented the three souls becoming one. Marcus felt warmth flow through his body as the bond was sealed. a connection that went deeper than words could describe. When it was over, he took one princess in each hand and turned to face the watching galaxy. "I present to you," the Empress announced, her voice carrying across the stars, "the Imperial Consort Marcus Cole and his bonded partners, Princess Seraphel and Princess Nixera. May their union bring prosperity to the Empire and peace to the galaxy." The reception lasted 11 days. Every species with diplomatic relations to the Velanthi sent representatives. The palace was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Each curious to see the human who had accomplished the impossible, Marcus moved through the crowd with his 2 wives, greeting dignitaries and answering the same questions over and over. Yes, he was really human. No, he had not planned any of this. Yes, he was very lucky. No, he did not fully understand how he got here either. On the 3rd night of celebrations, he found a quiet corner of the garden to catch his breath. His feet ached from standing. His face hurt from smiling. But underneath the exhaustion, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Happiness. An elderly Krix diplomat found him there. The Krix were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, small lizard-like beings with wrinkled skin and wise eyes. This particular Krix had lived through 3 galactic wars and served as ambassador for over 2 centuries. "You look like a man searching for meaning in chaos," the Krix said. Settling onto a bench beside Marcus, Marcus laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who has seen that look many times before." The diplomat studied Marcus with ancient eyes. "Do you know why the old races fear humanity?" "Because we are unpredictable." "But it goes deeper than that." The Krix gestured at the party continuing in the distance. The Velanthi perfected themselves into stagnation. They eliminated chaos, emotion, and uncertainty. In doing so, they stopped evolving. They became a fixed point in a changing universe in humans. Humans never stopped being chaotic, emotional, and irrational. You fight and love and create and destroy with equal passion. You make terrible decisions and brilliant discoveries. You are messy and complicated and absolutely alive. The diplomat smiled, showing ancient teeth. "That is why you terrify us. You are still becoming. You have potential that the perfect races traded away long ago." Marcus thought about this for a long moment. He had always seen humanity's weaknesses as something to overcome. Their emotions, their irrationality, their tendency toward conflict. But what if those things were not weaknesses at all? What if they were the very things that made humans special? "The galaxy will be watching you," the Krix continued. "You have shown them something new. A human who captured the hearts of the most logical beings in existence. They will want to know if this is a fluke or if there is something truly special about your species." "No pressure then," Marcus said dryly. The diplomat laughed. "No pressure at all." Months passed. Marcus settled into his new life as Imperial Consort. It was nothing like he had imagined. His days were filled with diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and endless lessons about Velanthi history and tradition. But his nights belonged to Seraphel and Nixera. They were different in every way. Seraphel approached their relationship like a complex equation, constantly analyzing and optimizing. Nixera approached it like a wild adventure, following her heart wherever it led. Together, they created a balance that somehow worked. Marcus taught them things no Velanthi had ever learned. How to tell jokes. How to argue about unimportant things just for the fun of it. How to enjoy imperfection instead of fearing it. And slowly, the 2 princesses began to change. They laughed more. They worried less. They became more than they had ever been before. One evening, a message arrived from Earth. The Space Administration had been flooded with communications from across the galaxy. Humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Council with full membership. An unprecedented honor for a species so young. The Admiral's message was brief. "Whatever you are doing out there, Cole, keep doing it. You have done more for human-alien relations than 50 years of diplomacy. We are proud of you." Marcus read the message 3 times before setting it aside. He had never wanted to be a diplomat or a pioneer. He had just wanted to explore the stars and maybe find something interesting along the way. Instead, he had found love, purpose, and a place in a universe far stranger than he had ever imagined. That night, lying beneath a ceiling of crystallized starlight, Marcus watched his two wives sleeping peacefully beside him. Seraphel's face was relaxed, free of the constant calculation that usually defined her. Nyxara had curled against his side. Her silver hair spread across the pillows like liquid metal. He thought about everything that had led him to this moment. The crash, the trial, the ceremony, the countless small choices that had brought him from a burning ship to the heart of an alien empire. It was completely insane. It was absolutely impossible. And yet here he was. "You were thinking loudly again, husband?" Seraphel murmured, her eyes still closed. Nyxara stirred and nuzzled closer. "Tell us what troubles you." Marcus smiled in the darkness. "Nothing troubles me. I was just thinking about how strange life is. One day you were a simple officer on an exploration ship. The next day you are married to two alien princesses and representing humanity to the galaxy. Do you regret it?" Nyxara asked, a hint of worry in her voice, not for a single second. He felt both of them relax against him, reassured by his words. They had come so far from the cold princess and the passionate outcast he had first met. They had grown. They had changed. They had become a family. "I have been thinking," Seraphel said slowly, "about introducing more human cultural elements to the Empire. Your music, your art, your games, the poker tournaments are already spreading to other star systems," Nyxara added with a grin. 3 governors were caught playing during an important council meeting last week. Marcus laughed. "Maybe we should start smaller. I was thinking of teaching the palace chefs how to make pizza." Both princesses raised their heads to look at him with identical expressions of confusion. "What is pizza?" Seraphel asked. "It is a circular bread covered with sauce and cheese and various toppings. Humans argue about the proper way to make it more than almost anything else. Why would you argue about food? Because it matters to us. Because having opinions about small things is part of being alive. Because sometimes arguing about pizza is more fun than agreeing about everything." The sisters exchanged glances. They did not fully understand. But they were willing to learn. "Then you will teach us," Nyxara declared. "And we will argue about pizza with you." "That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me," Marcus said, and he meant it. Outside the window, the stars burned with ancient light. Somewhere out there, humanity was taking its first steps into a wider universe. They were making friends and enemies. They were learning and growing and becoming something new. And at the center of it all, a simple human commander lay in bed with 2 alien princesses, planning to introduce pizza to an intergalactic empire. The galaxy was not ready for what was coming. But then again, it never had been ready for humanity. And that was exactly how they liked it.